you guys, but unfortunately, I'm just not going to be here the first week of school. I just had surgery, so I'm still recovering. But we have the lovely Mr. Hoppe, who is a substitute that's really well known here at Carolina Forest High School, so you may know him already. He's going to be with us the first week, and then hopefully I'll be back next Monday, and then we could dive right into the content. But I figured I would make this video for you guys just to go over the basics, the beginning of the year kind of things. If you've had my class, I'm sorry it's a little bit repetitive, but I'll go quickly because this is a video. I don't want to take up a lot of your time on this. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to show you your first project that we're going to start today. So I'm really excited to be getting to know you guys next week, and hopefully you guys get a lot accomplished this first week of school. So I already went over the surgery and the substitute. I do want to go over this really quickly. If you know me at all from the past, like if you've had my class before, maybe you've seen me in the halls or whatnot, I do take educational trips every year. So I've taken kids to all of those places in that paragraph, which is a lot to read. So I'm not going to read it all to you. You can read it at your leisure. But we are going to be going to Greece next summer for 10 days. So if you're interested in taking an educational tour with me, there's already 6 students signed up. I try to keep the numbers a little bit low. It isn't affiliated with Carolina Forest High School in any way. But if you're interested to see me when I come back, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. A little bit more about me. I have 2 of my favoriteest doggos in the world at home. I'm probably cuddling with them right now as you're sitting in class. But I'm pretty much obsessed with them. The gray one, her name is Heidi, and the black one, her name is Mia. Those are my favorite little muffins. So let's just talk about a little bit about what we're going to be doing in this class as a whole. Obviously, we're going to be creating a lot of artwork. So you're going to be using a lot of skills and techniques that I teach, and you're going to just be applying them and applying them and applying them. So we're going to practice a lot with a bunch of different techniques. Throughout that, you're going to learn a little bit about art history, about people from art history, about movements from art history, but we're going to be mainly just creating projects. So some of those projects that we're going to create, and this is dependent on your class. I did just record a generic video. If you're in my Art 1 class, you're going to learn all of the basics. So we're going to go over how to draw, how to use value, how to shade, how to paint, how to use paper mache. So we're going to go over a lot of different materials just so that you have kind of an umbrella of information. And that way, once you're done with Art 1, you could choose to go into some of my upper level classes or more of the art classes that we have on campus, which is a little bit more refined material. So if you're in my drawing class, we're going to be doing some more grid projects. We're going to be working more with shading to make things look more realistic. So there's the self-portrait examples from my Art 1 class. If you're in my Art 1 or my painting class, we're going to be using some paper mache materials. So you might either make a piñata like my Art 1 students, or usually I just do an ornament project with my Art 4s. In all of my classes, you're going to learn 1-point perspective. So if you've already had an Art 1 class and already know 1-point perspective, we're just going to go over it one more time just to make sure that that information is fresh in your brain, because it is very important to learn about linear perspective. We're going to do 1-point and 2-point perspective in all 3 of my classes. We're going to do some still life drawings. We just talked a little bit about value, but we're going to do a lot more than just shading, normally tonal shading. We're going to learn how to use stippling, how to use scumbling, how to use contour hatching. So you're going to learn a lot of different ways that you can kind of use your artistic talents and still put value into your pictures so that they look realistic. These are for my Art 1 class, and if Mr. Hoppe has already handed you your syllabus, if you're in my Art 1 class, if you don't mind writing down 2 Sharpie markers at the top of your paper where it says materials, I forgot to put that in the paragraph, I believe, but we are going to be doing this project probably starting next week, so make sure that you have your Sharpies with you, and we'll talk about more of the required materials in just a minute. But this is implied line drawing. So there's actually no lines in these drawings. It just implies that there's a line there because there's high contrast in between the black and the white area. So we're going to do a little bit of that. We're going to be using tempera paint if you're in my Art 1 class. If you're in my Art 4 class, you're going to get the chance to use watercolor and acrylic paint. You're going to do some gridding. All of my classes use gridding. It's just an easy way to take something that's small and enlarge it and use proportions properly. So it is a good technique to know. Now, grading in this class is the same for all 3 of my classes. So 50% of your grade is going to be project-based. So those are big projects that you work a couple days on in class. Little assignments, like sketchbook assignments, those are 30% of your grade, and then 20% of your grade is going to be towards quizzes. So artistic integrity. What that means is you can't take somebody's work and just copy it and bring it as your own. If you look around the room a little bit, I'm not able to see myself in this video, but I hope you can see me pointing. But if you look around the room a little bit, you can see that some of the materials in this room are taken from somewhere else, but it's kind of made into their own. So like you see Winnie the Pooh, for example, Tom and Jerry. So you see characters that are used. That's kind of an okay way to take somebody's work and use it in your own agenda. But you can't just copy somebody's work off the internet and think that that's okay. It's just like taking a paper offline, copying it, pasting it, and turning it in as your own work. You have to adjust it in some way. And it is kind of hard to tell where that line is. So if you have any questions about that, just let me know. Also, we have to keep things school appropriate. So if you have any specific thing that you're trying to say, you can kind of see me on the side and we could see if we could use some of the stuff, but just overview, no guns, no drugs, etc., etc. You can read this quote on your own. What this basically is saying that we all have our differences, but we also have similarities. So we come together in this art class from various backgrounds, and we all just need to learn to respect each other at where we're at. And that being said, if you've had my class before, you know I'm a positive Polly. It's kind of annoying sometimes how crazy smiley I am all the time. But I do really think that if you come in here with a good attitude, even if you're not having a good day, if you put a smile on as you walk in the door, your attitude will slightly change, just because this environment where you're creating art all the time can get you up if you let it. So you have to just keep a positive attitude. So I'm going to read this quote to you. The remarkable thing is that we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change the past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the string that we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so with you. So I 100% agree with that. I think that if you learn how to react differently to things going on around you, it'll really help you stay happier and be happier as a human. Oops, I skipped one. So the class rules, they're also written on the door in bubbly colored handwriting because this is an art classroom, but let's go over them really quickly. So the first one is be prepared for class. So just show up with all of your materials and ready to learn. And we'll talk about the materials again in a second. Be to class on time. I do count tardies. If you are a chronically late person, you might want to adjust your schedule. Make sure that you're here when the bell rings, inside the door, not down the hall. Not you put your backpack down and you went to the bathroom without asking. Like, you have to be in this class, present in this class to be not considered tardy. Listen to and follow directions and ask questions. So if you have a question and like you're kind of afraid to ask it because you're not sure, like you feel a little stupid asking it, if you have a question, other people probably have the same question. So if you don't feel comfortable asking it in front of everybody, sometimes I might be like, okay, everybody stop what you're doing and I'll address your question, just because if you asked it, a lot of people might have that same question. And sometimes I forget to go over things, so it's good to ask questions. Respect the people, equipment, and furnishings in the art room and get permission to use others' materials. Now, obviously, if it's my materials, I don't mind you using it. You can get up and use them at your leisure, and I'm going to talk about where they are in the room in just a second. But if you're borrowing somebody next to you's pencil, for example, don't break it and give it back. Don't use all of their eraser on them. Just make sure you're being respectful and you're using their materials like you would use your own. Be honest and accountable for your actions. Honesty is super important to me. If you come and say, like, I forgot to do this at home, is there any way I can have more time? Like, I'm going to be more susceptible to saying yes than if you make up a giant excuse and then I find out that it was a lie. So just be honest and be accountable for yourself, making sure you're staying up on your assignments. Use your time wisely. This is super important in this class because we do a lot of long-term projects in here. So we spend maybe even sometimes weeks on a project or a couple of days on a project. So if you're not using that time wisely and you're spending a whole day chatting with your friends instead of what you're doing, it is 20 points of your final project grade if you are using your time wisely and you're putting in effort. So just make sure, like, know that I'm watching and there will be points taken off if you're not spending your time wisely. Work quietly, use appropriate language, and have appropriate conversations. Obviously, this is a hands-on class where you're going to be working individually. Some are group projects that we do in here, but mainly it's individual projects. So you are allowed to talk to the people around you, whisper, talk, have conversations, as long as they are appropriate for school. And if you were a former student of mine, you could tell everybody in the room that I hear everything, and I don't want to, it's a curse, but I do hear everything, and it's kind of annoying. So just make sure if you're talking to somebody, it's something that you wouldn't mind me knowing. Be responsible for your work area and your tools and clean up after yourself. So we're going to be doing a lot of different kinds of things in here. We're going to be painting and using clay and using paper mache, which makes a really big mess. So if you leave a mess behind, that next person that sits at your table might get paint on their backpack or charcoal on their pants. So we need to make sure we're just always being accountable for your space and making sure it's clean and it's the way that you'd want to come into the classroom to see. And then last but not least, have a positive attitude. You can do it. I promise you that even if you're that one person in here that's like, oh my gosh, I don't know why I signed up for art, or I don't know why they put me in this class, I don't want to be here, I don't want to learn. Just if you try every day, even if you think you're not an artist, you will get better. As long as you are trying, you will get better, because I teach you starting from the basics up and I build you. So if you try, you will succeed. So here's some things I'm going to point in this video. I don't know if you guys can see me. It's kind of small in the corner, but here's where you guys can store your materials. So if you look directly in front of my desk here where there's a Spider-Man and there's like a cityscape, Mr. Hoppe can probably point it out to you. You could see on the front of that cabinet, it says block 1, block 2, block 3, and block 4. So in those cabinets, if you open them up, there are shelves right behind where that sticker is, and you can store your materials on that shelf. Just make sure if you put stuff into that cabinet that it has your first, last name, and block number on it, because after a little while, we have so many projects in there that it gets kind of a mess. If you look over to your right, you will see also those cabinets say the same thing, block 1, block 2, block 3, and block 4, but it says it twice. If you see the Bob Marley cabinet, it says palettes at the top. So that's where you're going to put your painting palettes. If you look at the Don't Worry, Be Happy cabinet, it says sketchbooks at top. So that's where you're going to put your sketchbooks. So there's a block 1, a block 2, a block 3, and a block 4 after that. So you just put it in your blocks cabinet. Excuse me. If you look towards the door, in the bookcase, there's a color coordinated little pull-out cabinets. So inside each of those little drawers is crayons, colored pencils, and markers that are color coordinated. So let's say you wanted a green marker, you just pull out the green drawer, grab the green marker. And if we keep up with that and make sure that everybody's putting their stuff back where they belong, we will obviously be able to find things a lot easier. If you look to the right of that, you will see fine tip colored markers. They're all in a yellow container with the color facing up so that you can find them. Next to that are a basket of rulers and a basket of scissors, and also a container of pencils and a container of erasers. Just please make sure if you're using those materials that you put them back where they belong, and make sure you put them back before you leave. Don't take my pencils elsewhere. Otherwise, we will have no pencils here for you to use, and then you'll have to bring in your own. Otherwise, you'll get a 0 on some projects in the future. So make sure you're putting them away. Also, by the door, if you're looking at that bookcase, on top of the bookcase, there's a clipboard that has sign-out sheets on it. So if you have to go to the restroom, just ask Mr. Hoppe or myself when I come back, and then you could just sign out on the sign-out sheet. Make sure you also sign back in so that I know exactly when you were out and when you're back at. Next to that, there's a little basket. It has little paper passes in it. That's for if you have to go to the nurse, or if you have to go to the media center, or you have to go somewhere else besides the restroom. If you just go to the restroom, you don't need to get a pass. You just need to ask, sign out, and then sign back in. Right on that phone by the door, there is a clock on it so that you always know what time it is without pulling out your cell phone. All right. Now, the evacuation maps are also over there by that table on the purple bulletin board. If you look behind you, there is a word wall that has a bunch of vocabulary words on it. So if I ever ask any questions, that's where you can find a lot of the information that I'm asking questions about. And I think that's pretty much it for now. The agendas are always going to be listed on the board. They're the same for now, just because you guys are all starting on the same project. But obviously Art 1 is listed under Art 1, painting under painting, and drawing under drawing. So you just got to look for your thing, and then you can always know what we're doing for that day. If you're in my first block class, it tends to be a little warm in here in the morning, like in the summertime, springtime, and fall. As soon as second block and third block come, it gets freezing in here. So the air conditioning pipes up. So you might want to think about bringing a sweatshirt or a sweater in here just to keep yourself warm so that you're not shivering the whole time. Secondly, we do use a lot of materials that get really dirty, like I said before. So if you'd like to bring a nice smock or an oversized t-shirt that you could always have here, I'll just store it for you. You could keep it just to put over your clothes so that way none of your clothes get ruined. I will tell you, it gets sloppy in here, and it's probably best just to have something that keeps your white pants white. Rules on food. If you were in my third block class or my first block class, I do not want you bringing an entire plate with your whole lunch on it or your entire breakfast on it. Now, if you're running late to school and you just didn't have time to get breakfast, you're like, can I eat this? Can I have 5 minutes to eat this, Miss Norris? I will say yes, because I'm not that kind of human that I'll tell you absolutely not. Now, if it starts to become an issue where you're doing that all the time, I will start to take away the ability to bring food in my class. So just little snacks. Just make sure if you do bring a snack that you don't spill it on your paper, because that would be horrible if you were like day 4 into your project and then you spill some soda on it. So just make sure that you're keeping up with where your fingers are at all times so you don't knock stuff over or wipe some Cheeto dust on your paper. All right, let us click over really quick. I'm going to talk about the syllabus before we go ahead and discuss the first project. Mr. Hoppe, if you would like to hand out those syllabi. At the top, I'm not going to read all this to you because we basically went over most of it. At the top, I'm going to go over just the requirements for the course. So if you're in my Art 1 class, I need you to get a sketchbook, and I have a couple extras. If you can't afford it, it's fine, just let me know. But they are just 9 by 12, so there's regular paper size sketchbooks that look like this. You can get any kind as long as it's just blank sheets of paper. So it can't have lines on it, it just needs to be blank. There are cheap and then there are expensive. So you can just get one at Walmart for $5, or you could upgrade and get a leather bound one for $20. It's up to you how much you want to go for, but all it needs to be is just about this size and just regular sheets of paper. You don't need to buy watercolor. You don't need to buy all purpose. You just need drawing regular paper for my drawing class and my Art 1 class. Pencils. Just make sure that they are just regular wooden pencils. And regular pink erasers also. So just regular wooden pencils. And the reason I say not mechanical is just because if you're trying to shade with a mechanical pencil, it gets a little complicated because it is such a sharp point. It sometimes dents the paper, and it gets really hard to shade into that paper once it's already dented, even if you erase it 1,000 times. So wooden pencils, erasers, black Sharpie markers. Just bring 2 of them for our first project that's going to start next week. Styrofoam egg carton. So if you don't eat eggs, just get with somebody in the class because you could split one in 2. You just need 6 little egg places. And that's going to be for our paint palette. And then 1 gallon size Ziploc bag. So that way we can put our egg cartons into that bag. For our drawing class, same thing, sketchbook, just regular drawing sketchbook. Pencils, erasers, Sharpies. This time you're going to need 2 regular size Sharpies and 2 fine tip Sharpies. So like drawing Sharpies. Then there's optional items listed below. If you want, like if you're really into drawing and you really want to get serious with it, I suggest just getting a little kit with each of those pencils, and it's listed in there. So you can look over that. And there's also a suggestion if you wanted to buy your own colored pencils instead of using the class set. Last but not least, my painting class. It's a little bit different with the sketchbooks that you're going to need just because we're going to be doing a lot of painting versus drawing. So they need to be a little bit heavier weight sketchbooks. So I said 2 9 by 12 or 8 by 10 multimedia pads. They could say multimedia or they could say watercolor. It's just a little bit of a heavier weight. Same thing with the styrofoam egg carton and a gallon size Ziploc bag and pencils and erasers, obviously. Okay, so that is it for that. I'm going to flip back over to the name symmetry. Now, this is your first assignment for all of my classes. If you've been in my class before, you've done this before, so you've already handled it. It's really fun, it's easy, and it's going to be your nameplate for your sketchbooks. So I'm going to flip right on over to the presenter screen. You can see my hands. Don't judge my nail polish. It's the middle of summer for me. So this is what it's going to look like. And I'm going to just tape it over on top of your sketchbook so that it looks like it's kind of laminated onto the front. So this one obviously says Caroline. And what she did is she went from like pink to purple in the middle and the background and then didn't color in the letters of her name. This one says Kylie. So if you look at it closely, you can see there's a K, Y, L, I, and then E. So this one kind of obscures her name, so you really can't tell unless you're specifically looking for those letters what it says, which is really cool. And that's the cool thing about this project. You can kind of go one way or another way. You can make it very visible, your name, or you can make it invisible. So to start, you are going to take a regular sheet of paper, and Mr. Hoppa will point to this for you, but where the front lab table is with the sink and the spray and the basket of paper towels, which you could use to clean with, in the top drawer there's always going to be sheets of copy paper. If you ever need paper, that's where you go to find it. So first we have to make the paper into a square. So you're going to take the top left corner and fold it down into the other side and just try to make it as even as possible before you press it down. And then press it down. Then we are going to cut off this excess bottom portion, which would make a perfect square. Now, this first project is called radial symmetry, which means that you can fold this paper when we're finished any way and it would match up exactly. So all the lines that you're drawing are going to match up exactly. Now you got a big triangle. So you're going to take that triangle and fold it in half. Again, try to make it as even as you can. The more even you get it, the more the lines will line up with each other when you're finished. Some people get really bothered by that. And then we're folding it one more time so that we have a small triangle. Now, I just made this whole video once before and it deleted it. So I'm going to show you my finished one that I just did. That looks like this. So what I did there is I started just with one triangle. So if I fold this all the way up, you can see that I used bubble letters and I wrote just my last name, so Norris. Now, this is going to be your nameplate for your sketchbook assignment. So it's always going to be like the thing that helps you recognize what your sketchbook is. So you could use your first name, you could use a nickname, you could use your last name, you could use your initials if you want to. It's up to you as long as you know, to recognize it that way. It has to have your name in some form on it. So what I did is just wrote Norris, and then I did a little random line in this corner over here just because there was a little bit of awkward space there. Now, if you don't know how to do bubble letters, I always say just start with the regular letter. So let's say you were doing E. Then you outline that letter. And then obviously if there's a space in there, you got to outline that too. And then you just erase the original line. So like F. You just outline the letter F. And then you erase the inside line. So you can make these as pretty or whatever. If you're really good at bubble letters, you can make them all crazy. But what you want to try to do is take up the whole space. So you don't want to just write your name in the center like that. That would be super boring for this project. So even if you wanted to just do that, if you're really bad at bubble letters, you can just do other lines in it to kind of split up the space. This is going to look really ugly just for a bad example. Now, once you're finished doing the first triangle in pencil, you are going to trace over that with any color marker that you want. I'm using green. This is not a black Sharpie. I do not have black Sharpies, so don't ask. I just have the markers that are up there. So you can use whatever colors you want, trace over it. And the reason I say to use markers to trace this is because, number one, it's dark, so you'll be able to trace it easier onto the other side. And number two, it bleeds a little bit. So what that does is it helps you see the other side better. So then once you're done with your one triangle, you're going to open it all the way up. Everybody can see that. Now you're going to take the corner and pinch it. So you're going to fold this under and you're going to trace it through on here. So it's up to Mr. Hoppa. There are windows here that you can hold this up to so that you can see it a little bit clearer. If you wanted to put your cell phone under it with the flashlight, that tends to work well for me. So you could just put that on. And that way you can see it very clearly through the other side. You probably can't see it on the screen. But now once you do this, you might be like, oh my goodness, my letters are upside down. They're not legible the same way that they were. That is okay, because when you open it up, it's going to be like almost like a reflection. So it's a reflection of the first one. So every other one is going to be like backwards. Okay, and that's totally fine. So then once you're done tracing this triangle, then this whole corner would be finished. And what you could do is fold it under, pinch it like this, and then you're going to trace it through on this side. So that way you'd have the whole top done. And then you just fold it under this way, and you trace it all through on this side. Now, if you do make a mistake and you trace it through on the back, that is totally fine, because it'll just help you see a little bit better what's supposed to go on the front. So any way that you fold it and trace it is fine, because it's radial symmetrical. So even if you make a mistake, have Mr. Hoppe help you and look at it. Like if you trace it on the back, just trace it over on the front again. Now, once you're finished with your whole outline, then you have to look at it and say, okay, so what do I want to color? What do I want to color what? Now, if you want to do the background, one solid color, that's fine. If you wanted to do a different color for each space in the background, that's fine. Or you could just use your letters if they're bubbles. So like maybe I do the ends in green, my O's in yellow. Maybe I do a rainbow. You know, you could start with one color and move to another one as you go out with your letters of your name. The only requirement is if one N is one color, all the rest of the ends have to be that same color. Because radial symmetry doesn't just end at lines. It has to be lines and color. So just make sure if you're doing one thing, one color, the whole rest of the things have to be that same color. Try and be as neat as you can. I know it's kind of a struggle. Use the windows if you need to. There's a window that goes into the hallway that has light coming through it if you need to. You could use a screen. It's up to you how you do this. So just try your best. And then once you're finished, make sure that you flip it over and you write your first and last name and block number on there, just because even though your name's on the front, I'm not, like if there's two Carolines, for example, I'm not going to know which Caroline it is.